Hey, I'm Frostallion, and in this video we'll be looking to build a couple of weakauras. I was asked years ago to make a video on rune timers, so it's better late than never. Weakauras can be daunting to start with, but you can build so much just in menus without any coding. I really encourage you to try. Okay, so let's start building rune timers. We're going to hide those and start with a progress bar. We're now going to call this one Rune 1 and enter. And all we need to do is we start normally through the menu system, but they've introduced a plugin, which means you can go resources, runes, replace triggers, and there we go. We now have the menu done for us. We want this to be rune number 1, and we have a champion killing themselves to the tank dummy. Right, and that's as much as you should need to do, but you can go show always because mine has a bug in it and won't do it unless I do that. And there we go. So that is now our progress bar of rune 1. The left text I want to actually be the progress, and the right text I don't want at all. But if you just do this and delete it, it comes back, so you need to press spacebar and it'll go away. We don't want the decimal point, so that can go away. And we want this to be top to bottom. Now if we look at this outside of that, you'll see that it's just the background of the bar, not the bar. So we need to go back to rune 1, and where are we? Display, yep, top to bottom. We need to invert this. And now you have the bar. No, there we go. Right, so there we go. The last thing is this number's been turned upside down, so we need to do none. And we don't want the icon because all the runes are the same color, so there's no value in it. We'll increase the size of the text, and we'll get rid of bottom text. We don't have it. Stacks, we don't want it. And then we'll take away the offsets, putting them to 0. We'll now make this something more manageable. How about that? That'll do. And we'll change the... No, that'll do. That'll do. Right, now new, we'll go to dynamic group and we'll call it YouTube runes. There we go. And we'll take our rune 1 and we'll drag it down to there. And when the blue bar's visible, that means you've got it in the group. We go back to trigger, and all we're going to do now is duplicate it over and over. So rune 2, and it conveniently increments it for us. Rune 3, 4, 5, and lastly 6. And there we go. We can minimize that and do everything from there. So as you see, we now have down runes, and we want to make this grow from the right. And that is basically a bunch of rune timers. The last thing to do to actually make this group dynamic is set sort to ascending. This will now mean that when I get rid of this and hit on these things, all the dead runes will appear on this side and my normal runes will come on that side. So that's it. That's basically rune timers. However, we can do more things with it. For example, we want the load conditions predominantly to be Death Knight, make things nice and orderly, and if you want it to appear only in combat and keep clutter off your screen, there is the button you press. Now what we also want to do is go to display and the bar color. Now I want the progress, the color to be shown whilst this is progressing to be, I don't know, pink. Why not? And then we're going to change the text color alpha to nothing. Take all the alpha away completely. Now we're going to go to conditions, add a condition and say if the remaining duration is less than, and this is the point where I want information to be shown to me, because really I don't care when I have like 12 seconds on timers. So all I really want to know is if I have say 2 or maybe 3 global cooldowns, I'll pick 2, so what's that going to be? Say 3 seconds. That'll do. Then I want the bar color, there we go, and I want that to be, I'll make it the same as this one. Why is that even showing? That shouldn't be showing. It's not supposed to be showing, and yet it's showing. Anyway, there we go. So there you go, it's blue. And we're also going to add another condition and say I want the text, where are you? First text color, and I want that to be full alpha. Right, so now let's come back again. That's very convenient. We do this. Put the runes down, they arrive on that side, and once it gets to 3 they should change colour and have a timer. Magic. And there you go. That is how I built those. So now we have our runes. What we can do is add a corruption bar to sit on top of it. We're going to go to a new progress texture, and we're going to just say YouTube core or RC, that'll do, and come away. Let's just make that a little bit larger. And now, so what we're going to do is go back up to the top and say, let's say left to right. But again, we have the same problem with inversion in that it actually drains the bar away, so we need to do right to left inverse. And we don't, oops, done that too early, we don't actually want that icon, we want beam, and let's say this green beam, that'll do, okay. And then we go to there, line up the left hand side, well that was convenient, line up the right hand side. Right, so that's our icon. You can actually take this away and, oh no, you don't have to do anything about it, you can say same, but you can go to background color and take the alpha away completely, and that will just now grow naturally. The trigger we want for it, all you have to do is type in runic corruption in this bar, but we can go back through our plugin and go buffs, yep, there it is, runic corruption, replace trigger, and it actually make sure it ticks own only. And there we go, that is, and we have to load on talent specialization. Oh, that's the wrong button. Unholy player, come on, really? Player class, Death Knight. And then in combat. And there we go, so that is the runic corruption bar. Okay, so let's have a look at doing one for Death and Decay. It used to be, because D&D was just a patch on the floor dealing damage, there were no buffs or anything, you had to make a timer for it. You don't need to, but let's just do it for completeness. So YouTube, D&D, enter, where are we, trigger, event, combat log, cast success, source unit will be me, and then spell name with a capital B, defile, and then we're going to set a timer for 10 seconds, which basically means if weakauras sees defile cast, set a timer. Now what we actually want now is this buff called Death and Decay. So what we're going to do is go out of this and very conveniently click this button, that button, and Death and Decay, and replace the trigger, and it's done all the menuing for us. The other thing we want to do is go to display and invert it, so it's going to look like a nice building duration. And the last thing actually to resolve the thing I was talking about falling apart is sticky duration. So what this means is that when I put it on the floor, nothing happens. When I run in, it's growing up, but I come back and it's still growing up the same bar. Right, so that's all we need. Oh no, we need to do the load conditions, don't we? So player class, Death Knight, specialization, Unholy. Right, so that's all we need for that weakaura. We actually need to make some others. Right, so we need to make a couple of different cooldown bars because Defile has a shorter cooldown than normal D&D. So let's make a group, YouTube D&D, okay, YouTube D&D group, forgot about that, new, okay, whatever. You go in there, and you progress bar, we're going to go with status, spell, I forgot to title it, this will be YouTube Def Cooldown. And we're going to ignore the rune cooldown because it is because we don't want the weakaura to show up every time we use our runes. Defile, and because it's a separate weakaura, we need to change remaining time to 10, which means that it's not going to show up until the previous duration weakaura is done. Then we're going to set a maximum progress of 10, which means that because otherwise it would start in the middle of the bar and go downwards, which is irritating to look at. So let's drag this up into here and then throw this on the floor, stand on it, wait a couple of seconds, and hopefully it should go seamlessly. Yep. little bit early. Let's just change that down from less than to less than or equal to. So back to trigger less than 10. Right, so the load conditions for this needs to be with the file, because otherwise it's going to keep popping up all over the place. So the file, and that's that one. The final one to make is with the YouTube D&D cooldown, and actually what we can do for the sake of argument is just duplicate this and call this one YouTube D&D, because I already made one like name that way. And we're going to change immediately, click that button again and select the other options that aren't the file. Go to trigger, change this to death and decay. Hello, death and decay, defile. Let's go to N. Okay, so that was interesting. And then we want this duration still to be less than 20. We still want this one to be the same, and go to display, and we want the maximum progress to be less than 20. So hopefully, I have no hope in it at all, but there we go, that's down, that shows, and then hopefully just the one weakauras will trigger. Hey, there we go. You never know with these things. Right, so what we're going to do is use the group alignment to center align, and we're going to go to the display, and we're going to set all of them the same. So I don't know, 200 with a height of 50, none of it matters. I left the, yeah, great. So that's now your block of D&D cooldowns. Okay, so the last thing we can look at with D&D, or really any timer you don't want to look at all the bars with, is converting it into something else. So for cooldown reasons, let's just go back to the file, start with you, and we're going to duplicate, and then we're just going to call you whatever, text, and then we just click convert to progress texture, and it keeps all of the same settings we had beforehand. Increase it up a bit, and all we're going to do is go to anti-clockwise and double click invert, because that should have done it to begin with, and that should now bring the color of the thing round. So now we're back to the file cooldown and duplicate text and convert again into progress texture, and then same thing, anti-clockwise, so it takes it away. You may also want to just simply desaturate it. So we just do this, throw it on the floor, run in, it's now building, sticky duration doesn't work even though it should do, wonderful, and now it draws away. So there you go, that is the texture version of weakauras. You can't add text on the progress texture. You'd need to make another weakauras, just a text weakauras, and just slap it in the middle. Right, so let's move on to something else. Alright, so I suppose the next thing we can look at is making a power bar, I guess. Progress bar. I'm going to call this RPPPV, whatever, doesn't matter. And trigger will be, again, you can go through the menu system or simply click that one, resources, runic power, replace trigger, and that does all the power things for you. Worth noting, if I deselect power type, this is now a power bar for every single class. So yes, so you can log into anything and it'll immediately show up. I don't necessarily recommend doing that, because unless you just want to have like a flat power bar, we can actually get rid of the icon. We don't need that. Go away. Because it's kind of useful at times to color them, and you get more more use out of, for example, conditions with things. So if we select, okay, so let's just do this. So conditions, add a condition if power percentage is greater than or equal to 70%, then bar color goes red. That's the type of thing you'll be looking at, but that's not necessarily always going to be useful for every single class. So what you can do is go back to trigger, go to power type and say, right, so all the classes that I play that have something where I want to be spending stuff where it goes red. So I go to that one, Demon Hunter, Warrior, you know, and then that's how you can manage the loading of that. Otherwise, if you're making, for example, energy bars, you would then do Rogue, Monk, Hunter, Druid maybe, stuff like that. And really that's just as simple as a power bar can be. So I suppose when it comes to weak auras, even if you don't need any of the ones I've been through, you absolutely need a couple of text weak auras telling you how long your plague will last and how many festering wounds you have. So let's just very quickly make that, and we'll call that wounds, and the trigger will be, again, that would just be aura target debuff, but you can just go to debuffs and click festering wound, replace triggers, and it does all the menu for you. Display, now we just really just want stacks, but if you want to put times in, you could also, that's the wrong button, do that, and that will show up with a bit of a gap, and then make that very large. And now, there we go, we have wound counter and duration. I'm not that worried about the duration of things because, I mean, you're never going to run out of time on wounds. Well, you might do, but it's very rare. And you just do exactly the same thing for your plagues, spelt badly. And that you want as progress. And again, it'll just be aura, target, debuff, virulent plague. But as you keep saying, you just go through there, replace trigger, target, debuff, own only. Always important to have own only. And that's just another timer. And you don't need the decimals on that, so I can go away, very large. And the same deal. It's also important when making these things that you get your load things, just to make things not cluttered. So the last thing I'm going to talk through are the sudden doom timers. Now, for many, many years, I just had a little timer text icon in the middle of them. The really only important part of these timers is to know the offset is -155. You can then make and crop the width and height also to match the current buff that shows up. The problem I found is that the actual aura itself oscillates when it comes online, and if you choose the animation to flash, then all that happens, or flash or bounce or pulse, it actually pulses at the opposite speed as the one that's actually, as the cooldown itself, and it's just nauseating. So instead I went for a like a highlight effect that goes over the top of it. You do that by doing glow rather than opaque, because otherwise it's quite you know, garish. And you have to make sure you have both of them there. The trigger is, of course, just aura, sudden doom, player buff, own only. There's no other triggers. And the conditions, I have that if there's two of them, you need to have it on both. Is that when you have two stacks, it changes colour to something else, but the actual duration of the the duration of the buff itself doesn't change. So you can have two stacks, spend one of them, it'll still keep ticking down. So I have remaining duration less than 3, has a bright pink colour. It's actually here for some reason, I don't know why. And that's it. So there's nothing really of it's just progress texture up in here. Somewhere we can find it. Icons, Blizzard alerts. Here we go, Blizzard alerts. This is where you'll find them, in here somewhere. there he is, Sudden Doom. Right, and that's that. There's nothing really of any... Oh, that's the wrong one. There's nothing really of anything else to talk about with this one. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all the useful weak auras I can think of. If you obviously, once you know how to just click icon, duration, buff, aura stuff, you can make as many as you possibly want to. So I hope you found this helpful, and thanks for watching.